I just challenged myself to complete my first ever character design portfolio in only 5 days, and I learned a lot. I'm Zeppi and I'm a completely self-taught digital artist with zero industry experience, so this entire project was so painfully new to me. Chances are you're in the same position. So how do people like us make something like this? Let's waste no time. Here's my 5-day character design portfolio. First off, I needed an idea. Conveniently, I made a video a few months prior that some of you may be familiar with. That's right guys, it's WOTU. A lot of people have been asking for a part 2 on that one, so here it finally is. If you want to watch the other video first and come back, be my guest, but this whole project will have to stand up on its own anyways, so I'll be keeping things contextually relevant to the form of a first impression portfolio. Before creating a character, it's important to already have a story in mind so you know what purpose each character will serve. You can't go just adding characters everywhere randomly and just writing them in. Even just choosing the setting is enough. So here's what I've got. Our main character for this story is Yuka. Once tasked with the initiation of life in the universe, they're betrayed by their own siblings, stripped of their power, and lost into the cracks of a universe which is falling apart. Now, according to the original version I wrote when I was 12, because this of course is all a redesign of a childhood story that I made up, Yuka, kitty cat, went somewhere in space and slumbered for about 6 billion years. Then they woke up in a slice of a universe called a dimension, all disoriented with the universe's worst case of the morning drowsies. And what could they possibly do next? Well, they immediately found a planet with life on it and conveniently the universe's best magic and fighting school, and they studied there until they became a super awesome sword-wielding goddess with a ton of friends, including a very original looking dragon called Shadow. Then they began to travel to other dimensions of the universe, dimensions which were all named after colours. Red dimension, green dimension, blue dimension. And to what end? Well, they're trying to help people in each world and fight the evil monsters from the white dimension, which are all minions of the evil overlord. And who could this be other than Kitty Cat's sister that betrayed her so long ago? I had to cut a lot out there, but this is basically the gist of the story that I'd made. It was hard to decide what to keep and how to structure this redesign. If only there was someone or something or some website to help me. This video is sponsored by Milanote. Milanote is great for organising your creative projects, from planning to collecting reference pictures or even just brain dumping your ideas. It is great for artists because everything can be organised visually. I've been using Milanote to figure out the elements of artwork that will make up this WOTU redesign. I wrote all my original thoughts on this centre card and then branched out some new ideas and what artworks I'd make to represent these facets of my world. In subboards, I put photo references of each section of the project to refer to and build upon. I really like how you can put a board within a board. It helps keep everything neat and tidy. It's so helpful to be able to paste references as well directly into the board and then move all the bits and pieces around subboards if it gets too cluttered. Milanote makes it super easy to start your own project with their plentiful wealth of templates created for every type of creative endeavour. You can also share your boards with other people using a link and can collaborate in real time. There's plenty of intuitive tools you can use to organise your ideas, and Milanote is available for free with no time limit. So sign up for a free Milanote account using the link in the description. So the goal of day 1 was to make some drawings just to familiarise myself with the general visual style of the story and get back into the swing of drawing conceptually, with lots of sketches and iterations. The characters here would mostly belong to a race of anthropomorphic mantises that are heavily based on Chinese culture and styles. I decided that it would make sense to draw a base version of their species, almost with the same body type as Yuka, and then use it as a reference point for my future designs, which I hope to exaggerate the anatomy of. The mantises would have strong shoulders, upper legs, waists, and forearms, while the rest of their limbs are more thin. They can also have different lengths of necks and have a bug-like abdomen. For anyone who is watching along in the streams and is crazy about bugs, I constantly call this part the thorax, which is just... it's wrong. Sorry to any bug nerds who are upset with my ignorance. I'll just search it up next time. After creating the anatomical base for the mantises, I sketched out some alternative ideas for Yuka's mentor character. There were two competing ideas: a strong and brash mentor who, despite their small stature, was the most skilled and durable warrior of all the mantises, or the weathered scholar who advises Yuka to find their own path in learning to fight. The strong, brash mentor would probably clash more with Yuka's contemplative and independent personality, while the scholar might complement it. With all these ideas out there, I decided to give it a rest for the day and come back later. I was back on day 2 with a pair of fresh eyes, and what was I thinking with these characters? We encounter our first big self-identified mistake here. These two characters look the exact same. There's no shape language or even much variety in the outfitting, so you know how to scratch that. Obviously, I wasn't very happy that I basically wasted a whole day and had no product to show for it, but I guess it was a very much needed warm up and put into perspective how much harder I needed to push these designs. It is super important in character design portfolios, especially in your lineup, that you make each design very distinct, enough so that they could be identified on silhouette alone. So I started again. First, I wanted to do a bit of a warm up in the new style, so I started by drawing Yuka again and finding some more certainty on their design, mostly with the outfitting, as I wanted to change from dimension to dimension. The clothing of these characters is heavily referenced from Harmful and uses a lot of motifs from Chinese mythology such as Journey to the West. You might have heard me just mention the setting of this story, which is the green dimension. Dimensions are a very small pocket of space, sometimes as small as only containing a single planet and a star. Yuka wakes up on the sole planet in this green dimension in the surface cave, and they're encased in a thick swath of ancient vines. As Yuka claws their way out, they're drained of whatever energy they have left in their body and pass out. Some mantis children discover them and haul them back to their village. When Yuka wakes up, they're in a thatched building. 3 figures loom close by next to a fire pit. I didn't get a lot done on this day. I did manage to revise these designs and push more of a sharper figure for the scholar and a rounder and sturdy look for the general, which is awesome, but I had to head out early because I got other things to do in my life. I locked in, and I don't say that lightly. I woke up and I was ready. I was super proud of how the general's design came out the day previous and was excited to finalize the scholar. I had a bit of an idea of the monarch that I'd worked on when I was off stream, but I was mainly focused on those other 2 characters. This stream lasted 6 hours, and it was here that I began to fall into self-identified mistake 2. Too much detail. For the time frame I'd given myself, this was way too short to be able to provide enough turnarounds, alternate poses, and detail shots to make a reference which you can completely understand these complex character designs by. These are fine as one-off illustrations, but there is a lot going on. To combat this, I could have done one thing differently. I could have identified what the purpose was of this portfolio. At first, I was just doing this as a fun challenge and not to apply to a job, so I just assumed I could follow whatever style I wanted. I'd been watching various character design portfolio videos while attempting this challenge, and the observations of Erin Basker in this video stood out in my mind. She pointed that there are differences between portfolios depending on what they're for. Each portfolio is fit for purpose and requires different things. It would have helped me a lot to figure out what exactly I was making the portfolio for, because I think a week-by-week TV animator would rather get spaghettified by a black hole than have to work on a show with a character that looks like this. So I should have decided earlier, are these designs going to be animated or 3D modeled for a game, or made into collectible figurines, or made into sock puppets? Don't only have an idea. Know what your purpose is when making a portfolio like this, because there's a ton of different places art is used and they all demand something different. So with that not in mind, because I didn't realize it until it was too late, I continued drawing. Back to the world of WOTU. We're in the thatched room. Those 3 figures are revealed by the firelight to be the scholar, general, and the monarch. They discuss a demon which has been a threat looming over the mantises for a very long time, and they wonder if Yuka, a mysterious creature in their eyes, is linked to its appearance years ago. The scholar asks for Yuka in order to study them to understand more about these forces, but the general butts in and demands that they gain custody of Yuka in order to train them to fight the monster. The monarch is familiar with these disputes between them. After all, they are the two remaining heiresses to her throne, and she was getting old. They were desperate to prove themselves better than one another, but she didn't really favour either of them. So she told them that they had to come to a compromise. Yuka would train with the general in the day, and at night they would study with the scholar. I finished day 3 with some flat colours for the characters. I tried my best to keep values in mind using the colour layer trick I talk about in this video. Harmonious values are super important in character design so as to not cause any visual confusion. I tried to differentiate these characters with different colour motifs, with the general sporting this warmer magenta for strength and bravery, and the scholar with a blue and gold colour scheme which is associated with knowledge and class. I tried a bunch of different colours. Self-identified mistake 3, considering this was also a practice of time management, I could have sped up the design process around the colouring stage and also added a bit more bulk to my portfolio by making little mini versions of the characters called thumbnails to decide their colour schemes. I actually did this in the original WOTU video with Cynthia. I made her a ton of different colour iterations based on a sketch and then ran with the one that I liked the most. Luckily, I did at least have a good idea of the personalities of these characters, which was something to base the colours off, but I ping-ponged between ideas a little too much. So yeah, there was really no need to be switching the colours on the entire final piece while saving nothing to show for my design process. The deadline was starting to get a bit real here. What do you mean I only have 2 days left to draw this? Didn't I start this yesterday? Oh the panic of day 4 made me stress out about actually finishing this off. Especially because I also woke up late from a morning coma. I had just watched the finale of a show I swear not to care about. Arcane thawed this cold green heart of mine. Anyways, I decided to do some work on the villain character design because I didn't feel like streaming that day and I wanted to have some time alone in my design mind palace to put all this stuff together. And I really focused. I managed to draw and complete 2 characters. I first started off with mapping out some shapes for the porcelain demon. I love drawing cool multi-legged creatures, but it's always so hard to pose the legs. By this point in the challenge, I was losing steam, but because I had such a strong concept in mind for this character in particular, I was able to sketch a bunch of alternate poses until I got something suitable, featuring enough sharp shapes to look sufficiently evil. I wanted her to have more mantis-like features than the other characters, suggesting that she'd gone rogue and gotten wilder because of it. I blended the head garments of Chinese opera with a mask that will soon be coloured white, the colour of death in Chinese opera face paints. This character is the previously mentioned demon that threatens the mantises, and it does so through a strange method. The porcelain demon had haunted the mantises for decades. Ever since its first appearance, members of the court began dropping dead inexplicably. Soon enough, the monarch began to speculate that these occurrences had to be linked, and that the porcelain demon was behind all this. The creature got its name when the general conducted her first successful raid on the supposed cave of the porcelain demon. She found that it was lined with artisan masks and paintings, all reminiscent of people that had died untimely deaths in the Mantis village. Through consultation with the scholar, they figured out that the porcelain demon must be trapping people's souls inside the masks as it paints them. Does this remind Avatar fans of anyone? No? Okay. Anyways. Realizing that the demon had seen her face, the general cut one of her eyes so that the porcelain demon no longer knew what she looked like. Ever since that day, the demon has gotten more ferocious and moved their lair deeper into the caves where no one can find them. I wanted her to look warped and twisted, almost corrupted in a way. Because using the idea I made up in the original story, I liked the idea that all the antagonists were connected to the overarching villain of the story, Clay, now the leader of the White Dimension. The whole process of getting corrupted by the White Dimension is sort of like getting akumatized in Miraculous. A person has some sort of facet of negativity that's bugging them, and Clay can send a disciple from the White Dimension to corrupt them and take over their body like a parasite. This is all done to disturb the stability of the dimension so that Clay can absorb it later into their universe-spanning empire. After about 2 years of training under the general and scholar, integrating into Mantis society, Yuka begins to see Clay and the porcelain demon together in their dreams. Yuka seeks out the demon and finds their cave. They manage to approach it, following its cries along the passageways. Finding themselves in its vast cavern, Yuka finally finds the porcelain demon. We're expecting to see twisted and wicked masks. They see instead vibrant and beautiful paintings of previous figures in the Mantis royal family hung up on the walls. It is the porcelain demon's entire life work in here. Approaching the demon carefully, Yuka is able to remove their mask, and underneath, they look exactly like the mantis that took them into the village. The porcelain demon is the monarch's twin. I had the design for the monarch's face ready to complete for most of this process. I was very proud of the base I'd drawn earlier for an old person's physique, but I had to scrap this because I wanted the monarch to be a rounder and smaller character, draped in fabrics to make her seem bigger than what she was, to emphasize her fragility. I gave her a very ornate hat inspired by Chinese emperors, and you may have already noticed that Mantis society is matriarchal. This is inspired by the fact that female mantises, they're just badasses that won't take shit from a male. I mean, as soon as they meet one and make kids, then it's just... So yeah, we don't have any dude mantises around here anymore. Just thought that would be a nice touch. The monarch is the twin sister of the porcelain demon. When they were children, they were very often compared to each other, as it was unclear who would inherit the throne. The to-be porcelain demon was older, but her twin sister was more adept in every way, especially in the arts, which before the threat of the porcelain demon's attacks was highly valued in the peaceful Mantis society. The two sisters began to compete fiercely in this aspect, but the porcelain demon's sister was always just a cut above. That's when the disciple for the white dimension presented itself. It appeared late one night by her canvas set by a remote lake, where the porcelain demon could paint alone. The rocks by the lake were strewn with furious splatters of ink, thrown on previous nights in sheer frustration. The disciple used her jealousy of her sister to work their way into her mind and strike a deal. The disciple of the white dimension offered that she could become the most skilled artist in existence. She accepted without hesitation, and the white disciple possessed her. She became warped and twisted, growing an extra pair of arms and a long winding tail. She wanted to impress the Empress, her mother, and immediately began painting her. She was done by the morning, and the work really was quite exquisite. The disciple didn't lie about that one thing, but what the young mantis didn't know is that this deal came with a horrible curse. When she returned to the village, she found that the people were worried and in chaos. Her mother was found dead. Feeling guilty and scared about the deal she'd broken with the supernatural, she became the porcelain demon, painting a mask to hide her identity and isolating herself in a cave. She was too ashamed to go back to the village to see anyone in person. She had clearly cheated her own abilities and hadn't been there to mourn her own mother. The rest of the village soon assumed that she'd been taken by the same force, and she was presumed dead too. She made hundreds of beautiful paintings of all the people she loved, all the people that she missed, her caretakers, her aunts, her cousins, people in the village, all out of sheer misery and grief. She missed the life she'd taken for granted, but little did she know that in painting those she loved, she'd also doomed them, as their souls were captured inside the impressions of ink and their bodies left behind. Upon discovering this effect and lost in despair, she began to use this as a way to keep the Mantis village away from her, painting any soldiers or random villagers she happened to see in order to instill fear in her own people. But there was one mantis she could never paint, not out of an inability to, or the fact that they kind of look the same and she might accidentally seal her own soul away, but because she spent so much time resenting her sister for her abilities. She had never really spent time with her at all. She had never really loved her and wasted their limited time together, competing senselessly. So, how does this all end? On day 5, I had one character left to draw, and this character is called Shadow. Shadow is a direct redesign from my old character, which had the same name. In the original version, he was this black dragon character with a stoic personality. He didn't really speak much, instead resolving everything in violence. This contrasted with the old version of Yuka, who is supposed to be loud and rambunctious, but considering that Yuka doesn't speak all that much, I guess we gotta make some changes. I wanted his personality to be sort of incompetent now, but also headstrong, determined to prove himself to the legacy of his species and carry Yuka to the white dimension in order to have them fight Clay and save the universe. So Shadow is the way that Yuka travels through dimensions, and also he is the final surviving descendant of another character I redesigned, Cynthia, who's in the last video, and has the ability to swim through the gaps in the dimensions and travel between them. When Yuka takes the porcelain demon's mask off, the white disciple is revealed, and Yuka ends up having to battle this foe. I wanted to design the white disciple's true form, but in day 5, that is not happening. So you'll just have to make it up in your own head. Sorry. I prepared references and everything, but never got around to it. But more on that later. Yuka's fighting style is very evasive, and they rely heavily on their opponent's own mistakes in order to weaken them and find an opening to flee. But this time they had no way out. Yuka is cornered, when suddenly there is a bright light, and Shadow emerges from a tear in the walls of the dimension, raking his claws across the face of the white disciple. They battle, and Shadow ends up tearing it to shreds. The souls of the mantises slain are freed, and the porcelain demon shrivels into a young mantis girl. Her spirit leaves too, and she is finally freed from the curse. Yuka and Shadow carry her body back to the village, and the monarch immediately recognizes her. There's a festival celebrating her life and an exhibition of her artworks, which they killed people, but some of them were ultimately made of love, and she was being possessed, so it's cool. Let's display these creepy haunted paintings anyways. Yuka and Shadow are celebrated as heroes, but Yuka senses Clay's spirit is closer, but still far from their reaches, and Shadow notices it too. They end up saying goodbye to their new mantis friends and venture off to the next dimension. Now, to circle back to the whole process of this character design portfolio project, it was clear by this point that I'd run out of time. Self-identified mistake 4, I didn't plan my time very well. Even at the beginning of the challenge, I just threw myself in and thought, yeah, I'll just keep drawing until I stop. That was my plan, and by the end of it, I'd missed a bunch of super important drawings that I should have been making to add to this portfolio. I needed expressions, poses. I could have also done with some environment drawings and some characters in a scene together, but I think this ended up being kind of hard to visualize because of that other mistake where I didn't really know what purpose this portfolio served. So next time I try this challenge, I should definitely try to burn myself out a little bit less so that I can be putting a bit more effort into all these drawings I have left at the end. Managing your own creative projects is a skill that needs to be developed, and this challenge has pointed out a lot of ways I can improve in the future. Anyways, I wasn't super happy with how Shadow's design came out, especially at the colouring stage. I really liked the aquatic vibe of the line art and the hint of personality on the face, but if I had more time, I wish I could push this design further to better communicate the personality that I just decided for Shadow. He looks almost a bit too animal-like, if that makes sense, sort of just a pet or a steed, but Shadow is actually a talking, fully sentient and self-aware character, and that does not shine through in this design at all. Also, when I tried to draw him from the front and draw some expressions, it was really hard to capture this distinct likeness because there was no real concrete equation to how he looked. There's nothing too special about him, and his colours just make it more and more clear that I was over this whole concept by the end of the project. But not all is lost. While I did run out of time, lose a lot of potential to poor planning, get too lost in the details that didn't matter, and forget my portfolio's purpose, I did get to flex my character design muscles through these standalone visual works. I mean, these guys look pretty cool. So, before our final reflection on my attempt at this challenge, let's take a look at our designs. I think I would count this endeavor as a bit of a fail, but I think I learnt more from admitting that and reflecting on my mistakes than I would have if I just counted this as a success and the right way to do things. Taking a look back on the whole process, I made a new and more solid plan using milanote of what I would do if I could rewind time and try again. All my goals are more clearly mapped out. On day 1, I lay the project foundation with a bit more planning and structure. I tried to ignore this stage at the start, just relying on the wind to take me where I needed to go, but this method did not work. Make sure you know why you're making this portfolio, what you need, your main idea, and start planning everything in small, bite-sized pieces so you don't get too detail focused. Know most of your characters before you start designing. On day 2, develop these small pieces of idea and save every little bit of your process. Make sure it's salvageable as evidence of your design process so you can include it later to beef the whole final product up. And make sure to push your characters hard and make them all look different. On day 3, finalize your character lineup. You'd probably only be able to reach this stage this quick if you were making this out of character designs that you already have a base for. For example, a redesign or reimagining, so no stress if you need a few more days to decide which character is who. Then start developing any sketches that you discarded in the lineup phase and turn them into poses and expressions where you can. Make sure to choose facets of each character to explore in this that aren't shown in the lineup. Using my general character as an example, in the lineup she is very stoic and commanding, but maybe she has a fiery temper, so I could draw an expression where she's angry. If you want efficiency, try to get the most range out of your character in the least amount of drawings. On day 4, we're headed towards a cohesive visual understanding of all our characters. Finish your poses and expressions and then choose 2 characters with the most interesting dynamic and create some sketches of them interacting. Also start planning the final multi-character scene illustration, even if it's just a thumbnail. On day 5, finish anything you have left and make sure that illustration gets done. Make sure not to deviate from the style of your portfolio. If your portfolio is for TV animation and everyone is cel shaded with flat colours, don't suddenly render them in a hyper-realistic style with fully painted backgrounds. Make sure that the style is consistent. And if you do all these things, you'll theoretically have a sound character design portfolio created in 5 days. If you want to read the whole plan, the link is in my bio. Make sure to sign up to milanote first so you can make your own board like mine. I'd say midway through day 3 is sort of as far as I got in terms of this version, but this plan of course is adaptable to different timescales. I just preferred speedrunning this attempt in 5 days because I'm clearly not very good at long-term projects. I need a fast result, and also I live in the middle of space and have nothing better to do with my life except draw, so I could work on this pretty much non-stop. And of course, I am in no way an industry professional. This plan is just what I would want to do different in my own process for my own goals. If you're looking to do this same challenge, feel free to take inspiration or use my plan, but it is definitely not the standard and definitely does not cover everything that is required in a professional portfolio. Anyways, thank you so much for watching my attempt at this challenge. Should I try it again? If you want to be there watching it on stream, make sure you follow my Twitch or subscribe to my YouTube channel to get notified when I go live. I mean, we still have a few more dimensions to redesign and there's a huge character in WOTU that I haven't even mentioned yet. First, I'm gonna need some downtime though. Thank you so much to milanote for sponsoring this video and thank you to my channel supporters. I hope we can meet again soon. Zeppy out.